Hello students, welcome to the lecture on decision making. Decision making is something that we all do. It is also something that we do all the time. We all have plenty of decision making experience. So, the obvious question is, why should we study the decision making? There are two main reasons for this. Number one, making decisions is one of the most significant things that managers do. Number two, it can help us to understand how we make decisions. Now, both of these may enable us to improve the way we make decisions. By studying decision making, we can build on and extend our current experience. As a result, we can develop an approach to decision making which can help us as managers to make good decisions for ourselves, for those who work with us, and also for the organization. It may also help us to make better decisions generally and not just as managers. The process of decision making is of critical importance in decision making. This is because following a recognized process is considered to be the most likely way to produce a good decision. But following a recognized process does not, however, guarantee that all decisions will be good. Circumstances may change, or there may be a lot of uncertainty in surrounding the decision. Following a recognized process can help to reduce the risk of making a poor decision. In fact, several different processes can be used to make the decisions. Although one particular process known as the rational decision making model is considered to be superior to other methods of decision making. However, for a number of reasons, it may not be possible when making a decision to follow all the steps of this model exactly. Nevertheless, the rational decision making model provides a benchmark against which to judge the way decisions are made. It is also very useful at highlighting the traps that decision makers can fall into and which may lead them to make poor decisions. It is clear that making a decision involves making a choice about what to do. In a broad terms, therefore, a decision can be seen as a commitment to a course of action. This approach has several benefits. Now, let us see those benefits. It emphasizes that any decision has positive and negative aspects. In order to make a decision, at least one alternative course of action has to be discarded and cannot be pursued any longer, at least for the time being. This is the case even for very simple decisions. Making a choice to have a cup of coffee, for example, means at the very least rejecting the option not to have one. Decisions are made in the present with consequences for the future. Uncertainty is therefore an aspect of all decisions, as by definition the future is uncertain. The degree of uncertainty will of course vary between the situations. A decision to park in a well-lit car park with strong security safeguards is clearly less risky than choosing to park in a dark street in a rundown area. Decision making is the process by which a choice is made between several courses of action. In other words, it is the process which results in a commitment to a course of action. Decision making can be distinguished from decision taking. Decision taking is the committing to a course of action, and as such is only one part of the process of decision making. As we shall see, this decision making process includes stages such as gathering information and identifying possible options, as well as actually determining what action should be taken. Now, let us see these elements of decision making. One of the leading writers on decision making is Herbert Simon. He claims that there are three elements or stages in making any decision. They are number one, finding occasions for making a decision. This is intelligence activity. This is sometimes referred to as the search activity, that is, if there is no perceived need to make a decision, then there will be no decision making process at all. Number two, finding and analyzing possible courses of action. This is design activity. And number three, choosing a course of action from among those available. This is choice activity. These three elements reinforce the point made above, that decision making is a process which leads to a choice between two or more possible courses of action. Now, decision making and problem solving. A decision can be distinguished from a problem. A problem occurs when there is a gap or mismatch between what actually exists and what should exist. Managers may, for example, have to deal with a problem of absenteeism. The gap in this case is that present attendance at work differs from what is expected. Problem solving is the process of working out ways to resolve the situation by closing the gap. One of the characteristics of a problem is that it does not normally have a single correct answer. In order to emphasize this, a problem is sometimes distinguished from a puzzle, which is something that has a single solution. It may not always be easy to find, but it does exist. A crossword would be a suitable example of a puzzle. The solution to a problem will involve a decision or decisions, but these decisions relate to only one possible solution. If another way of solving the problem had been chosen, different decisions might have been made. This helps to highlight the point made earlier that decisions are often made in conditions of uncertainty. Another characteristic of problem is the problem as it appears may not be the actual problem. The term the presenting problem can be used to describe the problem as it appears at first sight. In the above example, a manager may be aware that the person has been absent without a plausible reason for 10 consecutive Mondays. This information may include the effects that the absenteeism has made on the amount of work being done, as well as speculation as to why the absenteeism has occurred and suggestions on how to deal with the matter. The presenting problem therefore may be mixture of symptoms, causes, desired end states and the solutions. Now, there are different levels of decision making. Let us see them. The discussion above concentrates on the role of individual in decision making. However, decision making takes place at all levels in an organization. They distinguish between individual, group and organizational decision making. The distinction is useful because it draws attention to the factors that might influence a decision and the consequences of it. Decisions made on behalf of an organization are likely to have a much wider impact than those taken by an individual, where decisions may only have an effect on the decision maker and perhaps a few others. Clearly, the number of people involved in the decision making process is also likely to be larger. This may require that some agreements has to be reached among the participants as to what course of action will actually be taken. Managers may, for instance, seek to establish some consensus among team members before proceeding with a new method of working. The three levels will naturally overlap. Decisions which affect all parts of an organization may be taken by one individual, such as the chief executive. It is quite possible, however, that the chief executive will consult with others before deciding what to do. It is quite possible also that a decision by a group or an individual will not be taken in isolation. When taking decisions, for example, individual managers may be influenced by the previous experience of the organization as a whole. Now, there are different types of decisions also. Let us see them. It is clear from what has been said so far that there can be considerable variation between decisions. They can have far reaching consequences for an organization, or they may just affect a single decision maker. They may, for example, be ones that are taken regularly and which involve little thought. On the other hand, they could be the decisions which are new and unfamiliar to the decision taker, and where it is not easy to know just how to proceed. It is useful, therefore, to consider different types of decisions, because the type of decision may have an influence on the process by which the decision is made. In fact, decisions can be classified in a number of different ways. One well-known typology was originally suggested by Ansoff. This identifies three types of decisions which can be described as follows. Number 1, strategic decisions. These are long-term decisions about the overall direction or strategy of an organization. For example, whether or not to embark on a new activity. Next is tactical decisions. These are short-term decisions about doing the things efficiently and effectively within the existing strategy. For example, recruiting new personnel, allocating budgets, introducing new procedures, etc. Now, third is operational decisions. These are day-to-day decisions about operational activities. For example, allocating personnel to particular tasks, ordering new supplies, etc. But it is not always easy to distinguish between these types of decisions, as things can depend on circumstances. Now, see, allocating personnel to tasks could, for example, reflect a new strategic direction for an organization, or it could simply be a way of ensuring that a day's operational work is completed on time. Nevertheless, the above reinforces the idea of levels of decisions and helps to show that decisions can vary considerably in their importance and impact. It is likely, for example, that most decisions by first line managers will be operational decisions about meeting day-to-day targets and objectives. Perhaps the most widely used classification of decisions is Herbert Simon's distinction between programmed and non-programmed decisions. A programmed decision is one that has been made frequently so that there are established rules and procedures for dealing with it. Examples of programmed decisions would be ordering new office supplies. Programmed decisions therefore tend to be routine and are used when situations are structured and clear. When a decision needs to be made, the requisite procedures are invoked. A non-program decision, on the other hand, is one for which there are no set rules or procedures. It is unusual and may never have occurred before. Unlike program decisions, there may be limited information, the situation may be unstructured, and it may not be clear exactly what decision or decisions are required. All decisions can be seen as more or less programmed or non-programmed. The first time any decision is made, it is likely to be non-programmed. However, if the same situation recurs several times, then some system of dealing with it is likely to emerge. Rules and procedures will be developed in the light of experience and can be drawn on and modified each time a similar decision is required. Over time, what was originally a non-programmed decision will resemble more and more a programmed decision. In principle, programmed decisions can be made automatically using information technology. Davenport and Harris argue that computerized decision making has been slow to develop, but recent developments in software applications mean that it is possible to embed automated decision making into the normal flow of work. They give the example of financial decisions relating to loans and mortgages. The implication of changes like this is that program decisions do not require managers to do anything. Even if decision making is not automated, managers will deal with program decisions by applying a process which has already been put in place. In this respect, program decisions may not require any managerial judgment. Some people have identified different types of non-programmable decisions. Minkers refer to simple and complex decisions where the former involve relatively few people, carry limited risk, and are fairly well structured. By contrast, the latter have several dimensions and may affect many people. Mitzberg identifies three different types of situations which require a decision to be made. Now, these situations are: number 1, crisis, a sudden or unexpected event which requires immediate action. This may well require a rapid decision or decisions. Next is a problem. It is something which becomes apparent gradually over time, but is not clear cut, at least in the early stages. Now, the absenteeism referred to earlier is an example, and as we have seen, this will require a decision or decisions in order to resolve the problem. Now, next is opportunity. It is a chance to do something. This is usually created by a single event and normally requires a rapid decision or decisions in case of opportunity is lost. In a similar vein, the decision can be viewed as adaptive decisions and innovative decisions. Adaptive decisions are ones requiring human judgment. These are decisions which cannot be programmed by a computer, but they may be ones where decision makers can use decision making techniques to help them. Now, innovative decisions are ones for which there is no precedent and the whole decision making process must start from scratch. All these various classifications have much in common. In broad terms, they make a distinction between routine and non-routine decisions and indicate that the latter may be made in a range of different circumstances. Essentially, more the decision is of routine, more likely it is that there will be established rules and procedures. We will concentrate on non-programmed decisions, since these are the ones which require managers to exercise the judgment. For non-routine decisions such as these, managers have to go through a decision making process for themselves in order to determine the course of action they will commit to. It is now time to go on examine the decision making process and the rational decision making process in particular. Now, what is this rational decision making model? Let us see. The rational decision making model has its origins in economics. It is a series of steps which will lead to the best possible or optimum decision in the circumstances. Now, the stages in the rational decision making process can be described in this block diagram. So, stage number 1 is define and clarify the situation in which decision is required, including setting criteria which the decision must meet. Next is identify alternative options and gather the information about them. Next is compare each option against predetermined criteria. Next is select the best option, and last is implement the chosen option. Now, let us see the different stages in rational decision making model. So, stage number 1 is define and clarify the situation in which a decision is required. Now, what can be the example of this stage? So, realize that there is a wish or requirement to move house. The decision is which new house to buy. Now, next stage is identify alternative options and gather information about them. Now, what is the example? Find out about properties available, where they are, how much they cost, what mortgage deals are available. Next is compare each option against predetermined criteria. Now, in this example, it can be said as take each available property and match it against criteria set earlier, for example, price range, location, number of rooms, etc. Now, next is select best option. So, in this case, it can be pick the property that fits the criteria most closely. Next stage is implement the chosen option. Now, in this case, put in an offer, that is the first stage of buying the new house. Now, this rational decision making model fits well into Simon's 3 elements of a decision. So, now let us see this example. Stage number 1 is intelligence activity. In this example, define and clarify the situation in which a decision is required. Next Simon's element is design activity. So, example can be identify alternative options, gather information about them. And third activity is choice activity. So, it is compare each option against predetermined criteria, select the best option and implement the chosen option. Now, you may well have come across the rational decision making model before. If so, you may have found that there are slight differences between the descriptions of above stages and the ones you have already seen. Similarly, if you search the literature that covers the rational model, you will find that the exact statement of the steps in model varies. Some of the differences you find may be like this. A stage described as establishing criteria which the answer must satisfy. This usually appears before the stage on identifying possible options and after the stage on clarifying the situation. Next is an initial stage described as recognition of a problem or sensing that problem exists. Next is a stage of gaining acceptance and agreement from others before implementing the decision, and final stage described as evaluation. Generally, these reflect the personal preferences of the thinker and do not alter the main steps of the model. For example, some feel that since pre-established criteria must be used to evaluate options, then there should be a specific stage during which this is done. In their view, this is preferable to combine setting pre-established criteria with defining and clarifying the decision. Recognizing that a decision will need to be made is also included in the defining stage above. This actually illustrates the links between decision making and problem solving. This recognition stage is the one at which a problem becomes apparent and the need for a decision or decisions arises. Gaining acceptance for a decision is vital if a decision is to be implemented successfully. As you will know from your own experience that people are often unwilling to carry out a decision that they do not agree with or where their views have not been taken into consideration. Nevertheless, this can be considered as a part of the implementation stage, albeit a very significant part. The final bullet on an evaluation stages does, however, add something which is perhaps not in the diagram. The reason for its omission is that evaluation is not part of the decision making process itself. It is something which takes place after a decision has been made and implemented. For example, when you come back from holiday, you may spend time thinking about whether you have made a good choice of where to spend the holidays and why. Evaluation therefore is important as it provides a way of learning from experience and of improving the way the decision making process is carried out. Although, as we have seen, there are many ways of expressing the stages of rational decision making model. For convenience and for consistency, this material will adopt the model given in block diagram 1. To remind you, it is number 1, define situation, number 2, identify the alternative options, number 3, gather the information on options, next is choose the best option, and lastly implement the decision. The main point about a rational decision making model is that if the process is properly followed, it should result in the best possible decision in the terms of criteria set for judging the decision. This is because all possible alternatives are identified and evaluated, all except the best one are rejected. Let us sum up this session. Having a logical thought process helps ensure that you will not neglect key factors that could influence the problem and ultimately your decision. In fact, you should always apply a clear logical thought process to all the leadership situations that you encounter. In this session, an attempt has been made to understand the importance of decision making in today's context. Decision making has been defined and various characteristics of decision making have also been discussed. The unit dimensional types decision, that is organizational versus personal, routine versus strategic, policy versus operating, programmed versus non-programmed, and individual versus group decision are discussed. The phases of decision making deal with identification, evaluation, and selection of alternative to a problem. Rational decision making model reduces the risk of outcome being wrong and increases the probability that the decision would prove that no other better decision could have been taken, as all such alternatives are evaluated already. Decision making is one of the most central processes in organization and a basic task of management at all levels. Faulty strategic and operational decisions can and do seriously impair organization's competitiveness. An understanding of decision making processes is therefore vital if managers are to go some way towards improving them. Thank you.